I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday morning and it's time for The Fix. Today we speak to the ANC's ally, Labour Federation COSATU, who has declared war on the breakup of Eskom. And we bring you more reaction to the State of the Nation address delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Lastly, we take a look at our weekend newspapers to see what's made headlines this week and why. The Fix starts now. This is The Fix, where every Sunday, without fear or favour, we question the big role players. We look ahead to tell you what matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. And as usual, my sparring partner, Peter Bruce, is back. He's columnist for both Sunday Times and The Business Day. And we will, of course, be unpacking the entire State of the Nation address. Peter, welcome back. It's lovely
thank
to
you very much. I went to London to see the Queen. She wasn't in. And I'm jolly grateful to be home. Did anything happen here while I was away, by the way?
Well, lots happened,
really?
as you all know.
Yeah.
I was intrigued particularly by your preview column that you wrote on Business Day, where you spoke about the fact that a certain Mr. Tito Mboweni, our finance minister, might very well not make it back into cabinet. Why is that something that you're speculating on?
I don't know.
Well, talk that I haven't heard?
I didn't start the speculation. So I read somebody who I respect very much, Carol Payton wrote a column saying it really did look as if he wasn't interested in the job particularly, and that that he wasn't going to be back in the new cabinet. And you know, he's had these colloquia over the last couple of months, one in December, one in January, at Gibbs, to which he's quite controversially invited a number of Harvard University development economists, Ricardo Hausman in particular. And at one of these colloquia, he said to the audience, "I'm not coming back." And so I sort of asked him, because we follow each other on Twitter.
Yes.
You know,
what did he have to say?
Well, I didn't. I mean, he basically, when I first asked him, he didn't answer. So I went ahead with the speculation, and I said basically, look, I think he's quite a good finance minister. Frankly, he would prefer to be governor of the Reserve Bank, but he only gets you know, there's only so much time, because as governor of the Reserve Bank, you lead a much more sort of refined life than a mere politician in a cabinet. Yes. But his instincts are all good. You know, and he's going to be a good finance minister, I think, and the market trusts him. He speaks his mind, which is absolutely there's no harm in doing that. And he's a little eccentric, you have to admit, and we have to learn to live with that. So I said that in the column, and then he did respond afterwards.
I'm so interested in that response.
He basically said, you know, you'll see how the response was, I'm going to be around. And you'll see the budget is mine, and it's not been written for me.
Okay.
And so I was quite relieved by all of that, I think, because it would be a loss.
Yes, one of the things that I found interesting was that you were saying that Mr. Mboweni prefers being the Reserve Bank governor because, in a way, it keeps him out of the hurly-burly of daily ANC politics. And we know, of course, the party's deeply divided. There's a big question around how the state is going to be restructured, and he would prefer not to be involved in those discussions.
Well, you know, Mboweni feels very deeply about the ANC. I mean, and he really is a passionate ANC supporter and member. But he also, there's a part of him that's sort of a kind of an old gentleman type. He's a bit old-fashioned. And he rather liked the life of a governor. Central bankers are a special breed. You know, they talk to each other all the time. They meet in Basel, in Switzerland. They are a club, really. And they don't do politics. They don't talk about politics. They don't get involved in rough stuff at all. They simply decide, depending whether you're following monetary policy or, like the Americans, a mixture of monetary and employment. It's just an easy. It's a nicer, more refined life, and he really liked it. And this is a bit rough for him, I think. But I hope he gets used to it, gets down to it. He's a very, very ambitious guy.
Yeah.
You know, and if he gets this right, how old is Tito? He's in his 50s still, for heaven's sake, I would have thought. You know, this is the guy who, if the Ramaphosa presidency goes well, and you know maybe even stretches into a second term, This guy, if he's been finance minister through a successful presidency, he could be the replacement. He could be the successor.
Absolutely. Now, of course, last night we had an incredible situation, Peter, with Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, the communications minister, essentially putting a hand in front of a camera of the SABC, blocking their ability to take photographs.
She seems to me to be quite a young, inexperienced person who's going to make a lot of mistakes. She's certainly going to embarrass Cyril Ramaphosa if she stays in this job, and I'm pretty sure that he'll really think hard about moving her in his cabinet reshuffle, which is going to be quite dramatic anyway. She is here, I think, you might have told me, apparently her husband is a very important figure in the Youth League.
Yes.
And Cyril needs the Youth League on side because it's, you know, the way you maneuver yourself and in ANC politics. She cannot be there for competence.
Absolutely. In fact, she issued an apology very shortly after what happened. But the apology is like a non-apology. She refers
She doesn't say what she's apologizing
for. And more than that, she speaks about an altercation that she had with the media. She didn't have an altercation. She censored the media. She actually, as communication minister, prevented journalists from actually covering.
Do we need a communications minister? We need an agency that regulates the spectrum.
Yes.
Not a minister. Why politicize it?
And one of the things that people often forget about Stella Ndabeni is she now also has telecoms on her hands. She has to oversee this fourth industrial revolution.
And the post office also.
Exactly. And if she doesn't understand the Bill of Rights, if she doesn't understand the Constitution, she's already gone feet into the SABC, interfering in areas where she's not supposed to. She was the deputy minister during Faith Mutambe's era, where they, of course, decimated the organization.
Well, she obviously learned well.
And of course, her fight with Faith Mutambe had nothing to do with the SABC. It had everything to do with the internal dynamics. So I think it's a real problem. But talking about...
she's a real danger. I'll tell you now, this woman is a real danger to Ramaphosa.
No, I think so too. I think he made a mistake in giving her all that responsibility. And her apology is really not up to scratch at all. I'm surprised that very few of the papers did not take her on the front page, because the treatment of journalists in this election period is actually very important. We had Floyd Ramaphosa choking a journalist on the parliamentary precinct.
Floyd Chivambo.
Floyd Chivambo. We also had, of course, female journalists being trolled in quite a heavy way. So to have this example set by the minister is actually quite bad. But talking about whether we need a communications minister, we've seen the city press, and we'll trawl to the papers later, but everyone's talking about this trimmed down, cabinet. How small do you think it's going to end up being?
I wrote a column a couple of months ago I think I write these things for myself. I don't know who reads them. But it was for the Financial Mail, and I tried to squeeze the cabinet down to see if I could get below 20 people. And you can. And there's a lot of it in the papers today, but none of them do the obvious one, which is to collapse the police, justice, correctional services, into Home Affairs. As the British do, and it works perfectly. There's a Home Affairs minister. The agencies operate themselves, and they're not too politically interfered with, and it works brilliantly.
Absolutely. That's, of course, something that we will be discussing when we trawl through our newspapers. But up next, the trade unions are sharpening their knives over Eskom's restructuring. Don't go anywhere.